up, guys? Good morning. Whew, gosh, my eyes hurt. What's up, dude? Okay, so we're in a series called Going Places. This is week 2, right? You guys count? Okay, solid. The adults, none of you guys had any clue, but the adult leaders know. This is week 2. So, when I got the lesson today, talking about going places, the first thing that came to mind for me was road trips. So, do you guys ever play road trip games when you're in the car? Like stuff to keep you from losing your mind on those really long road trips? Solid? Yeah, technology. So, I had technology as a kid, right? But my technology was primitive. And so, when my slate cracked and I could no longer chip it effectively with my chisel, I had to come up with road trip games. So my mom was like the queen of road trip games. See, my mom's family lived just far enough away that we'd have to drive for a few hours, but we went to visit them pretty often. Like they were kind of at that perfect distance for a lot of road trips. And mom loved making up dumb road trip games. Like one of her favorites was a license plate game. I don't know if you've ever, and she named them really creative things, like, like license plate game. So the license plate game is like the first person who sees a state gets a point. Like, New Jersey, there's a point, right? Do you guys have any road trip games that you're like all about? What's a road trip game you like to do? That's so creative. You're creative like my mom. I didn't point at you. You're going to Oh, solid. Okay, tell me about your uncle from Europe. Solid. You're just as creative too. That's fantastic. But it was harder because he's from Europe, right? So you didn't know what all of them were. What's a Kentucky? That's my best British accent. I'll ask your dad later how I did on that. What is that? Oh, yeah. So we call that, we did punch buggy. It's kind of like that, right? Yeah, but I know what you're talking. Like, I get it. Okay, one more. What you got? Oh, solid. Yeah, some more like distance. Okay, I got it. All right, I'm sure there's tons more. You can tell me afterwards. So we played all kinds of road trip games, and I love those because I'm competitive. I like competing on stuff. Now, I am not an athlete at all, so I don't really do that kind of stuff. But that's part of why I like, board games, video games. That's why I liked different clubs in school where we would compete on stuff. I love that kind of stuff because I like being challenged and I like growing. And some of the best people to challenge you to things are your closest friends. Do your friends ever challenge you to stuff? Some of you have blank stares. You girls are like, no, we're too kind to each other. But you boys are like, yeah, we just want to kill each other. Yeah. So my friends and we challenge each other to all kinds of stuff all the time. So I have 3 friends that I consider my best friends in the world, my 3 closest friends. One of those friends is my wife. She and I are super close. I also have a friend who's been my friend since grade school, like since I was in, I think 3rd grade was when we met. And then I also have my best friend that I've made as an adult. So these are my 3 friends. Kiersey is my wife, Corey is my grade school friend, and Justin is my adult friend. He's the one that I made when I, was grown up and stuff. Well, Corey and we challenged each other all the time about just about everything. We love to compete, we love to challenge each other and to get better at stuff. So one of the things he and I both did, Corey was kind of an athlete, but we also together, we did a speech and drama club at our school. So we would do skits, we would do speeches, we would do debates, all kinds of stuff. And we go to competitions, and the winning school, of course, was the school who got the most medals. So we would challenge each other to see who could earn the most medals in our different contests. And each of us would do like 6 different events, and we would try to see who'd get the most. It benefited me because it made me work harder, benefited him, but it also benefited our entire team. Because the more we'd work and the harder we'd work, the more points our team would get. So that's great. Mr. Justin, though, I remember, he challenged me on something different. One day he calls me up and he's like, what are you doing this weekend, man? I was like, sitting. I don't know. What are you doing this weekend? And he's like, you want to come with me and go snowboarding? It's like, yeah, exactly. You know where this is going. You know what I look. Yes, exactly. It's what you expect. He calls me and he's like, you want to go snowboarding? I was like, dude, I don't do those things. This body is built for couches, not for slopes. He didn't call me yesterday, bro. This happened a while ago. I didn't imply otherwise. Listen to the story. He calls me and he's like, He's like, you want to go snowboarding? I was like, no, that sounds terrible. And he's like, come on, dude, we'll do great. I was like, bro, I don't snowboard. And he goes, I've never snowboarded either. We'll figure it out together. It'll be fine. So we go and show up. Now on the drive there, I learned something about this friend. Remember, Justin is my adult friend. I didn't know him back in school. As we're driving, he's telling me, yeah, I know I'm kind of chubby now, but did you know, I used to do track and field? Like, what do you mean you used to do track and field? You never told me this. He's like, yeah, I did running, and I did discus, and I did javelin. And I was like, okay, so what you're telling me is you're reasonably coordinated. I can't tie my own shoes without falling over. And you're telling me we're on even ground at snowboarding? He's like, yeah, it'll be fine. So we get on the slopes. They have what they call the bunny slopes. You know what the bunny slopes are? Yeah. The bunny slopes are the slope that's for people who don't know how to do things. And so the bunny, the normal slopes are like this. The bunny slope is like this. Yeah, that's pretty much, it's like that kind of slope. So I get out on the bunny slope and I'm like, I can do this. And I start going, I make it 4 feet and then hit my butt. And then I go 80 feet on my butt. So I climb back up and try it again, and it's the same thing every time. I'm just eating ice the whole way down. There are little kids that are this big who are skiing up to me in perfect skiing form, and they're like, mister, do you need some help? Can I hold your hand? No, kid. Shove it down the hill. So he challenges me to snowboard. That did not go well. Corey's challenges were helpful. Justin's challenge was not so helpful. Now, I'm glad I said I did it. We still had a fun day. But, challenges sometimes good, sometimes bad. My wife has challenged me a bunch, and I challenge her to stuff. I remember one of the biggest things she challenged me to was with our kids. So growing up, I was an only child. Any only children? Okay, cool. There's at least one of us. Yeah, okay, cool. So I didn't have any brothers or sisters. And I remember as a kid, I had a good childhood, but I didn't want my kids to be only children. I didn't want to just have one. I wanted to have a few so that they could have somebody to play with, somebody to fight with. Well, we had our first kid, and I loved it. It was great being a dad. But then we started talking about having another kid, and I got a little nervous. And I told my wife, I was like, I don't know if I want to have another. I've never had more than 3 people in my house. What if I don't like it? What if we have another kid and I want to return him, but the hospital won't take him back? What do we do? And that was a joke. That was sarcasm. Okay, it's a joke. All right. So, oh my. Please pray for my friends on the front row, guys, because they're in trouble. Okay, so she challenged me. She said, wait. I don't want you to do something you're not comfortable with. But I do know that ever since you were a kid, you told me you wanted to have more than one kid. So if it's something you really want and you're just a little nervous, I'm going to challenge you to pray about it, think about it, and see what happens. And I did. I changed my mind. Guess what? Not only did we have a second kid, but we had a third kid. And all 3 of them are awesome. And I wouldn't change it. She challenged me, and it turned out she was right. And I love our family. So I tell you all of this because friends are supposed to challenge each other. We're supposed to challenge each other. Because at the end of the day, all of us, as great as we are and as many things as we can do well, we all have things that we're not as great at. And if we ever want to go places, if we ever want to improve, we have to challenge each other to get better. Well, today, I want to read a couple scriptures for you. Here's the first one I want to read. And because I am not athletic, I'm going to lounge on this table and hope it doesn't fall. Okay. This is from the book of Matthew. Are you guys ready for this? All right. If you have a Bible or a phone with Bible, look there. If not, just listen. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead of him to the other side of a lake. So they've been hanging out on this lake. They get in a boat. They take off on the lake. Jesus dismissed the crowd that was there listening to him teach. And after he dismissed them, Jesus went up onto a mountainside by himself to pray. So basically, Jesus was kind of like your parents on a road trip, and your parents are like, will they never stop talking? And so Jesus says, disciples, give me some peace for a minute. Row your boat, I'm going to go pray. And he goes up on his mountain to pray. As the disciples are rowing, though, they have some struggles. They're on a boat, a considerable distance from land, and they're being buffeted by waves. So basically water from everywhere, just splashing all over the boat. The boat's rocking, storm's coming, it's terrible. Where was I at? Buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the water. So Jesus sees their boat bobbing. There's storms, lightning, all this stuff. And he can see in the boat, the disciples are freaking out because they're afraid their boat is going to capsize. It's going to sink. So Jesus walks out on the water. Well, when the disciples see him walking on the lake, they freak out. They go nuts. They're like, it's a ghost. They cried out in fear. Jesus immediately said, hey, take courage. It is I, it's Jesus. Don't be afraid. Well, Peter was one of the weird friends in the group. You see, Peter was that type of guy who never gave a second thought about being brave. As soon as something popped up, Peter was like, I'm ready to act. But then after he jumped, he'd kind of get a little bit afraid, right? So like if Peter's out with his friends and one of Peter's friends is getting bullied by somebody, Peter's the type of guy who's going to step up and he's going to shove the bully and be like, hey, get off my friend. You want to go? You want to fight? You want to take us outside? Let's go. Let's go right now. Let's go. That's Peter. But then if the bully was like, sure, let's go. Let's fight right now. Peter would be like, well, I'm kind of busy right now. Man, what are you doing like next Tuesday? You want to meet over at like the McDonald's and fight? I don't really want to fight right now. And he'd back off. Peter was kind of bad about this. When he had a chance to show his faith, he would jump, but then he'd get a little nervous and a little bit scared. Well, sure enough, when Peter sees what he thinks is a ghost out on the water, he calls out and he says, who is it? Jesus says, it's me. And then Peter issues a challenge to Jesus. He challenges his friend. Here's what he says. He says, Jesus, if it really is you, tell me to come out to you on the water. I want to walk on the water too. You know what Jesus says? Challenge accepted. Jesus says, sure, come on, bro. Walk out on the water. So Peter does what he always does. Without stopping to think, he jumps out on the water, looking at Jesus and takes off. And he doesn't sink. He's running. He's staying afloat on this water, running right at Jesus. But then suddenly, he sees the wind. He sees the waves. He gets afraid. And instead of looking at Jesus, he looks down. And when he does, he starts to sink. Well, luckily, Jesus is close enough to him that he's able to reach out, grab his hand, and lift him back up again so he can stand on the water. And Jesus says, you have little faith. Why did you doubt me? Why did you doubt me? And when they climbed into the boat, the storm stopped. Everything was calm. Jesus fixed it. So in this story, Jesus' friend issues a challenge to Jesus. He says, hey, if you are who you say you are, let me walk on water. Jesus says, okay. He challenges him, and Peter doesn't rise to the challenge. Just like my friend telling me I could snowboard. Peter did it for a little bit, and he looked pretty cool, but then he ended up on his butt in the water, and he failed. But Jesus knew what was going to happen, and Jesus was prepared for it. So in my crazy examples here, when Corey would challenge me at our drama competitions, he didn't know who would win. He had no way of knowing that. When Justin challenged me to go snowboarding, he didn't know that I would look like an idiot. He assumed that I would be able to do it because, he's my friend and he likes me and stuff. He was wrong, but he didn't know, and I didn't know. I didn't know how it would turn out. My wife, she had confidence that I could be a good father. If you could stop, it'd be great because it's so loud. She had confidence in me that I could be a good father, but she didn't know how it would turn out to have 2 kids. She thought I would do good with it, but she had no way of knowing. She challenged me, and I had to rise to it. But that's different with Jesus. Jesus did know. Jesus knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew for a fact that Peter was going to jump on the water and start walking. And then he knew for a fact that Peter was going to fail, that he was going to look away and sink. But Jesus challenged him anyway, because he wanted Peter to go places. He wanted Peter to improve, to get better, and he knew that he had a problem. It was great that Peter was always ready to go, but it wasn't so great that Peter tended to back away when stuff actually got scary. At the beginning, he wanted to flex and posture, but then it didn't work out for him. It's like those little tiny dogs. You ever seen one of those obnoxious little tiny dogs that like giant dogs walk by and the little dog's like, and they come up and run and they're like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to rip you piece to pieces. And then as soon as the big dog turns and looks at the little dog, doesn't even need to bark. And then the little dog's like, hey, I'm sorry, and then runs off. You know what I'm talking about? Our neighbor has one of those. I despise that dog. That's what Peter was like. And Jesus wanted to challenge Peter to say, dude, you got to have faith. when it's easy and when it's hard. You got to trust me because I want you to go places, and we got to fix this. So today, the reason I'm telling you all this ridiculous stuff, the reason I'm barking loudly into microphones, it's not just to give you headaches, although I do find that kind of morbidly funny. It's because I want you to know sometimes you are going to need to challenge your friends. Sometimes, just like Jesus, you are going to notice that your friend is struggling with something. And you want your friend to go places. You want your friend to get better. You want things to change for them. So you're going to need to challenge them. But when you do, there's some important things you need to know. There's some ways you need to consider the situation before you try to challenge your friend. There are 4 of those ways. Let me lay them out for you. The first thing I want you to do, when you realize that your friend is struggling with something, or when you feel like maybe you need to challenge your friend to grow and improve, first thing I want you to do is choose to care. Choose to care. Sometimes it can be really easy to go confront our friends about stuff for selfish reasons. Because maybe we want to tease them. We think it would be fun to, pick on them for stuff that we're better at. Maybe we just want to be really competitive. Or sometimes we can go confront friends about something and not realize that we're actually wrong. Maybe we shouldn't have confronted them. That can happen. So if you think maybe you need to have an awkward conversation with one of your friends, I want you to first choose to care. Think about your friend's feelings. Think about how it might impact them if you come and talk to them. Think about how you sound when you speak. Make sure you don't sound cocky or like you're picking on them. Make sure you know you're talking to them in love. So first things first, choose to care. If you realize you want to challenge a friend, choose to care. But then, don't stay silent. That's the second thing. Don't stay silent. If you realize a friend is struggling with something and you never say anything, it probably isn't going to get better. A lot of times we don't realize that we're struggling with something until someone points it out. I had a pretty good suspicion I would be terrible at snowboarding, but I didn't know. A lot of times when we're in the moment, we don't know that we're struggling with something. We don't realize that our lies are a problem because we only tell little lies here or there. We don't realize that the way that we treat other people, maybe we're kind of bullying other people and we think it's funny because the people around us laugh. We don't realize that we're being bullies, that we're being hurtful. Whatever it is, I want you to not be silent, to say something about it, to help them realize. But then the third thing I want you to do, after you've chosen to care, after you've not stayed silent, I want you to talk with, not about. With, not about. If someone is struggling with something, go talk to them about it in a place that's private, in a place that doesn't feel intimidating, but don't call them out in front of everybody. That's so uncomfortable, right? Or here's something that I'm kind of guilty of. When I'm about to have an awkward conversation, I get embarrassed. I get really nervous. And so I like to talk to someone to get advice. I like to ask, hey, do you think I'm handling this right? But the problem is, if I do that, that could make people gossip. So instead of going and talking to others, just go straight to the friend. They're your friend for a reason. Go straight to your friend. Talk with them, not about them. And then finally, when the conversation finally comes up, here's the most important part. We've chosen to care. We're not staying silent. We are, what was that last one I said? That I already forgot. We're talking with, not about. I want you to be honest. I want you to be honest. When you come and talk to the person, don't beat around the bush. Don't make things soft and gentle. Be honest. Don't be hurtful, but tell the truth. Explain to them why you think this may be a problem. Explain to them how you think their life could be better if they chose to change it, if they chose to trust in Jesus. Try to help them through honesty to overcome. Now, I know all of this sounds really uncomfortable, but it's important. And I'm going to read you one more verse to conclude that tells us how important this really is. The book of Hebrews in the Bible is actually a letter. It's not just a book. It's not like, Harry Potter. It's a letter. It's a letter from a person to other people. The people it was written to were at a church that was really struggling. They were being persecuted. That means people were attacking their church, trying to stop them from meeting, trying to mess with their lives. And here's the advice that the writer of Hebrew gave them. He said, hold on to the hope that you have and never swerve. Hold on tight to that hope. For the one who promised you is faithful. In other words, God's made promises to take care of you. Trust him. He's faithful. But let us consider how we may spur on one another toward love and good deeds. You guys know what spurs are? Solid. Some of you horse people know what spurs are. Okay, so my dad, his whole family, they're all actual real cowboys. My dad wears a cowboy hat all the time and boots. They raise cows, they have horses. They wear spurs on their boots because they can kick the horse and make it a little uncomfortable, but it helps make it go the direction they want it to go. So when he says spur one another on, what he's saying is sometimes you got to do that little uncomfortable poke to help encourage your friends to go in the right direction. If somebody's veering off course, sometimes you got to give them a little uncomfortable poke to make sure they get lined back up again. Don't give up meeting together, but encourage each other. And do it all the more as you see the day of the Lord approaching. God tells us this is important. This is a big deal. We're not doing it because we think we're better than other people. We're doing it because if we see a problem, we should care about our friends enough to help them avoid the problem. So that's my challenge to you guys. Friends are not afraid to challenge each other because it helps us go to the places we want and need to go. So this morning, I'm going to say a quick prayer for us. As I do, I want to remind you of those 4 things to consider. And in our prayer time, I would like you to pray that God would give you the courage to do these 4 things. I want you to choose to care. I want you to choose to care about your friends. I want you to not be silent. Choose to say something. I want you to talk with people, not about them. And I want you to be honest.